Damn.
Oh, I'm live. Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome back to a quick little video that I'm doing today. I will be re-ranking my Honda-thon. Some may ask, well, why not? Will this be pretty much the same since you really didn't like one movie and you thought one movie was just generic and may not be that different? I actually have rearranged my original list for how I ranked my Honda-thon a little bit, just to keep it kind of fresh, because my opinions on a couple of these movies have slightly changed. So I'm doing a whole other new video to showcase what I think of, or not what I think of, hi Jerry Goju, what I think the new order of the Ishiro Honda movies that I reviewed for my Honda-thon are in. So, and this will be the definitive list. And this is also kind of a prototype list for a certain video that I will be doing in a couple days. Well, no, not a couple days, either tomorrow or the next day. But for now, let's get to it. This will be pretty much a top 14 list from my least favorite Ishiro Honda movie that I reviewed for my Honda-thon to my favorite review. Does the list include Half Human and Gorath? No, it does not. Another list will. So with all that being said, let's get into re-ranking my Honda-thon. At number 14, this is one of the newer. This is one of the newer decisions. At number 14, this honestly really is my least favorite Ishiro Honda movie that I have reviewed thus far. I'm pretty sure it has the lowest rating of all the movies that I reviewed for my Honda-thon. Number 14, at the very bottom of the barrel, is The Human Vapor. I just got absolutely nothing out of this movie, except for a decent Yoshio Tsuchiya performance. But to be 100% honest, as good as he is in the film, I still do think that there are other movies that he's been in that are better than The Human Vapor. Invasion of the Astro Monster always comes to mind for sure. But yeah, honestly, I just got nothing out of The Human Vapor. I thought it was really boring. It's not one of... Is Human Vapor to this series what King Kong? Kind of, yeah. I just got... Bless you. I just got absolutely nothing out of the film. Did not affect me whatsoever. I don't think it's one of Ishiro Honda's best movies. Actually, no, I'm going to save that for later. Human Vapor just did absolutely nothing for me. I thought it was just a boring, let down, empty shell of a movie. So yeah, the bottom of the barrel is The Human Vapor. At number 13 comes into Dogura. If you've seen my hour-long review of the film, where every time I say this video is going to be shorter, it tends to be a much longer video. But if you want to go watch my hour-long review of Dogura with Justin Tang, my opinion is pretty much exactly the same. It's an extremely boring, one of the biggest cases of Sinister 2 syndrome movie. Well, same case as The Human Vapor, but it's one of the biggest examples of a movie with Sinister 2 syndrome that I've ever seen. It's very obvious that Ishiro Honda wanted to make a different movie, but they also wanted to have a sci-fi element or a monster movie element too. It's just incredibly generic. It's incredibly boring. It's just meh. It's a meh movie. Though granted, yes, there are a couple of things that Dogura has over The Human Vapor. It's got some decent special effects. It's got a decent score. Well, Human Vapor does too, but Akira Fukube is always awesome. And yes, Dogura has the Seatopian leader in it, playing probably the best character in the entire film. So that's good. But still, Dogura, it's incredibly generic. It's incredibly boring. It's just not a good movie at all. I think the biggest sin that it does is that it's incredibly boring. The Human Vapor and Dogura, in my opinion, are tied for my Honda-thon as the two of the most boring Ishiro Honda movies I reviewed. I'm not sure which one is the more boring. to be 100% honest. So yeah, Dogora is number 13. At number 12, Atragon. I'm not sorry. Atragon, I just don't think is that good of a movie. Um, and I'm glad that I still my opinion on Atragon has changed a little bit, but it's gotten even worse. I think Atragon is just a complete piece of garbage. Even though it has some things good going for it, the biggest problem with the movie is that it is just so fucking rushed. Why was there some kind of big demand to have Atragon out in theaters ASA fucking P? Had the movie not been rushed, it would have been a much better product. Honestly, I think if Atragon was a TV series, it would have been a much better product. Same goes for Latitude Zero. But I'll talk about that. Well, no. I'll talk about that another time. But if Atragon was a TV series, it would have been a much better film. And also it has Manda, which I think Manda is a completely fucking useless monster. And the fight with Manda in the film is boring as all living shit. The action scenes are terrible. That movie should have been directed by Jun Fukuda. It's another movie that I think should have been directed by Jun Fukuda. I don't care what anybody says. Ishiro Honda was just not good for action movies. And Atragon tries to be an action movie. And Ishiro Honda was just not the right person to direct the film, in my opinion. So Atragon is just just not very, 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 really not a very good movie to me. If anybody out there likes the film, that's fine. I did not. I was not blown away by it. It just, to me, if it wasn't so rushed, I wouldn't be giving it such a harsh review. But overall, Atragon just really didn't do much for me. I'd still rather watch. Oh, God, stop asking me those questions, Justin. At number 11, we have Battle on Outer Space. Of all of Ishiro Honda's space-centric movies, I definitely say Battle on Outer Space is his weakest film, and it's probably also one of his most generic films. I did say in my Battle on Outer Space review that I think it is the most forgettable Ishiro Honda movie, which I kind of have to, by default, retract that statement, especially now that I've seen The Human Vapor and also Varan the Unbelievable. Even though Varan the Unbelievable I think is a good movie, it is very generic. Battle in Outer Space just still really doesn't do that much for me. It's very prototype Star Trek, and I hate Star Trek. I think Star Trek is utter garbage. There's no monsters in it. There's no robots in it. At least with the Mysterians, there's a giant robot. All the characters are boring. The plot is very generic. It's very basic. It's just Battle in Outer Space is not one of Ishiro Honda's best movies. Though it does have some good things going for it. The special effects are really solid for the most part. The music is awesome for the most part. Actually, no, the music is awesome. The surface of the moon looks really, really, really cool. The final fight, even though it's clearly rushed, it still is very fun. So Battle in Outer Space has some good things going for it. But I still would definitely say overall, like I said, of all Ishiro Honda's space movies, it's definitely his most generic, and it's definitely his weakest space movie. Hands down, my favorite of Ishiro Honda's space movies is... Oh, yeah, another thing. Battle in Outer Space has a really good audio commentary, too. But also, hands down, my favorite Ishiro Honda space-centric movie is Invasion of the Astro Monster. I could go on and on about how much I love that movie. But yeah, number 11 is Battle in Outer Space. At number 10 is War of the Gargantuas. I'm not nearly as harsh on this movie as I used to be, but I still do find War of the Gargantuas to be an incredibly overrated film. And I really do feel it shamefully overshadows Frankenstein versus Baragon. It's got extremely boring characters. It's got a horrendous song sung by a horrendous actress. It's got an extremely repetitive music score. a monster whose roar is so fucking annoying. Even though it has, like I said, it has good things going for it. It has a great protagonistic monster, that being Sanda. I think Sanda is one of the most underrated Toho monsters of all time. Jackie Boy's here. Hello. Um, the fight scenes and the special effects are fairly entertaining, and they are well done for the most part. The sets are really well done. The music at times is very good, even though, again, is very, very repetitive. But I still find War of the Gargantuas to be just not an amazing film. It's one of the most overrated kaiju films ever made, and I think people just uh, inflate it out to be something. They try to make a mountain out of a molehill, as far as I'm concerned, with War of the Gargantuas. So yeah, even though I'm not as harsh on it as I used to be, I don't think it's one of Ishiro Honda's best movies. And I also don't think it's one of the best kaiju movies ever made. Sorry. Not as overrated as Heisei Godzilla. It's tied with some Heisei Godzilla movies. At number 9, we have Matango. This is not a bad movie at all, actually. I think it is technically a good movie. And it is a very good horror movie. Well, not a very good, but it is a good horror movie. It's got really good characters. It's overall, it's got a great cast. It's got good effects. Kind of what little. I was gonna leave the island until I got high. Yep. The drug allegory is very well executed, even though it's kind of in your face, literally and figuratively, but still well executed. The setting is really creepy. The music is really unnerving. My problem with the film is that there's not really any likable well, kind of. There's very few likable characters in this film. The ending I find to be extremely open-ended and kind of frustratingly so. And also the slow pacing drives me insane. I don't like how slow the film is, even though it technically is a case where the slow pacing does work to the film's advantage. I still don't like the slow pace. I don't like slowly paced horror films. I've said this many, many times, and I'll say it many, many more times in the future. I don't like a slowly paced horror film. There's very few horror movies I can think of where the slow pace does work. One of the biggest examples is the original Exorcist, right? But overall, Matango, it is a good movie technically. I'm not sure if I would classify it as one of Ishiro Honda's best films. In some ways, I think it is, but in others, I don't think it is. Though it is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of Ishiro Honda's most unique films. That is for damn sure. But like Justin Tang says, you really have to be in a certain mood to watch Matango. And I will still stick by my statement of saying Matango is the least most rewatchable movie of all Ishiro Honda's movies ever. You can watch the original Godzilla more often than you can watch Matango. I see myself watching Matango maybe once a year. The original Godzilla I could watch 3 or 4 or 5 times a year, give or take. But still, Matango is a good movie. It's got certain things that hold it back from me putting it a little higher on the list. Coming in at number 8 is The Mysterians. Thought about this movie a little bit more, and I kind of feel like I was just a tad harsh on the film, even though The Mysterians has its flaws, especially with its human characters, especially the human leads or the human female leads. But outside of that, I really do think I kind of overlooked how important The Mysterians was to Toho. It was their first color sci-fi film. And it was their first. I feel like it was Toho's first big color sci-fi epic. And it's got some It has an incredibly underrated mech. It's a very, very colorful, very action-packed sci-fi film, and it's a very imaginative film. It's got really good effects, except for the blue screen effects. Um, really, the Mysterians' biggest problem is the human characters. The aliens are pretty stupid, not quite as stupid as the Natal from Battle in Outer Space. The fact that Mogera is so underrated and so underutilized. Um, the music score, while it's good, um, is kind of repetitive at times. It's also sloppily edited at times as well. I also think the Mysterians would have worked pretty well as oh yeah, also not as dumb as the Cetopians, but I also feel like the Mysterians would have worked fairly well as a TV show as well. And if Koichi Kawakita could have ever gotten the opportunity to remake the Mysterians, I think that movie would have been a lot better. But in hindsight, I think I was just a tad harsh on the Mysterians. I don't think it's that as I don't think a 6.5 out of 10 should be given to the film. I think I should have bumped it up to a 7, but you could kind of say it's like a weak 7. But still, the Mysterians, it has its good things, but also has its bad things. Again, not one of Ishiro Honda's best movies, but I'd say it's one of his most ambitious films, so I will give the film that. Same with Battle in Outer Space, but I think the Mysterians is way much more of a better movie than Battle in Outer Space. At number 7, we have the original Mothra. Even though I gave the film a 7 out of 10, and I have no cons with the film, the Mothra is still... The reason I gave Mothra a 7 out of 10 is, while I have no issues with it, I still don't think it's like 10 out of 10 worthy good. This could be because I'm just not the biggest fan of Mothra, and I think I view Mothra more as a curiosity piece as well as a completionist piece as well. Obviously, if you're a big Ishiro Honda fan, you should check out the original Mothra. If you're a big kaiju fan in general, you should check out the original Mothra. If you're a big Mothra fan, certainly you should check out the original Mothra, though not me personally. No, I love Frankie Sakai as Snapping Turtle, and I love Jerry Ito as Clark Nelson. Jerry Ito just chews the living shit out of all the scenery that he's on screen as. Kind of like a prototypical Doctor Who. And Frankie Sakai as Snapping Turtle, he's such a fun character. And the special effects, they're really good. They're not some of Eiji Tsuburaya's best. But I'd say there's some of his more unique films. But in the overall scope of Mothra movies, there being Mothra, Mothra vs. Godzilla, Ghidorah Three-Headed Monster, Godzilla vs. Mothra 92, and the Rebirth of Mothra trilogy, and so on and so forth. I think it's one of the weaker Mothra movies, but it is a good start to the legacy of Mothra. And it certainly is one of Ishiro Honda's better early films. So the original Mothra is fairly good. There's just other Ishiro Honda movies that I like more than Mothra. Oh, except for one thing. This isn't really a con, but there is one thing I want to say is that the original script for Mothra would have been a much better movie, in my opinion. And had the original script been been made into an actual movie, that would have been a fantastic, fantastic film. And I would have put that much higher on the Ishiro Honda list. At number 6, we have Varan the Unbelievable. Now, yes, the film is incredibly generic. It feels like a TV movie still. It feels like the pilot episode to a TV show. Varan is a very generic monster. That's like the that should be an alternate title for Varan the Unbelievable, is Varan the Generic Monster. But outside of that, for what the film does, for the budget that it has, Varan the Unbelievable is still a fairly fun film. It's got... Basically, watch this movie for the monster, the music, and the special effects. Everything else is garbage, especially Korea Senda. Korea Senda is garbage. Yes, Korea Senda could eat a bag of dicks. But basically, watch Varan for Varan himself. That is the only reason to watch Varan. It's still a fun movie, and I do like it a lot more than obviously I do like it a lot more than these other movies, but I do think Varan's a good movie. It's not one of Ishiro Honda's best films. It's debatably his most generic. Of his pure kaiju films, I definitely would say that Varan is Ishiro Honda's most generic monster movie. Though if you were to ask me what I think his most generic movie overall is, I'd probably say either Battle in Outer Space or Dogora or The Human Vapor, but I'm not exactly sure. I couldn't really give you a specific answer. And yes, Varan does need more love. That's why I would say that Varan still is a very fun film, and you should definitely check it out. Now we get to the top 5. These are all movies that I really do enjoy, despite their flaws, for the first couple of them. And I would recommend these to anybody who's interested in getting into Ishiro Honda. Should definitely check out. Though this next one is definitely kind of controversial because number 5 is Space Amoeba. I'd probably say Space Amoeba is another contender. Is your stomach growling again? Or is that me? It must be me. Space Amoeba is another contender for Ishiro Honda's most generic film. Huh? I probably do. It's got it's kind of lacklusterly shot. It's lacklusterly edited. It's just a little bit. I do agree that it is a little bit of a lackluster film. The production for the film and how the film got made is definitely very intriguing, and it's a fascinating story. But the film itself, I still do feel is. Did you shit? Oh, I smell it too. I think you need. Oh my god! I think you need to wipe your ass. Thank you. Oh, everybody gets a taste of this. This is magic. All right, analysis. Oh, it smells like carrots and throw up. Oh, that gaga maggot smell like hot, sick ass and a dead carcass. Oh, even Stink would say that stinks. Anyway, what was I talking about? God damn it, you distracted. Oh yeah, Space Amoeba. The film itself, I still do feel is a little bit more overlooked than it deserves because it's got some decent ideas in the film. It's got decent special effects. It's got okay monsters. It's overall, it is an okay movie, but it still is a fun film nonetheless. Would I rank it as one of the best kaiju movies ever made? Absolutely not. Would I rank it as an underrated film? Even then, still probably not. But for what it still is a fun movie. And it's just a shame that it has such a bad rap because it was the end of Ishiro Honda's career at Toho for the most part for a long time. He didn't make another movie for Toho again until 1975 with Terra Mechagodzilla. And this movie came out in 1970. But still, Space Amoeba, for what it is still a fun movie, and it's just a tad underrated, even though it does have its flaws. Most notably, it just relies on rehashing a lot of older ideas, specifically from Rodan, and and a little bit of Dogora, and a little bit of Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, even though that's not a Ishiro Honda film. But still, Space Amoeba, it's fun for what it is. At number 4, we have The H-Man. Also, in hindsight, I feel like The H-Man, it has its number of fans, which is good. But I do say that, yeah, Yumi Shirakawa does a good job as Chikako. it does also work a little bit more as a horror movie. And of the kind of crime drama slash sci-fi films that Ishiro Honda made, that being, oh yeah, Kenji Sahara is pretty boring. I'll talk about that in a minute. That being The Human Vapor, Matango, and The H-Man. I actually do think The H-Man is my favorite of those three sci-fi crime thriller horror films. Um, so I highly do enjoy The H-Man. I think it's got a lot more good things going for it than a lot of people give it credit for. Even though it does have its flaws, the sci-fi elements do feel just a tad forced. Kenji Sahara is incredibly bland and incredibly boring, which is a shame because I love Kenji Sahara. Some of the effects are pretty damn bad. Like the superimposition of that dancer getting slimed, it looks pretty damn terrible. And at times, not the entire film throughout. Oh yeah, it does have Korea Senda as well, but thankfully he's not in the movie that much. And also, it does feel a little bit like Ishiro Honda wanted to make another movie, though here not so much. And the sci-fi and cop elements are blended together much more cohesively. Not quite as well as one may think. But still, it doesn't feel like the film has Sinister 2 syndrome, even though I definitely can really speculate that Ishiro Honda wanted to make a different movie other than a sci-fi horror film. But still, The H-Man is a fun movie for what it is, and I definitely would recommend popping it on like on a rainy day. On a really rainy, cold day, pop on The H-Man and just have fun with it. It's not a bad movie. It's pretty fun. Coming in at number 3 is the original Rodan. Yeah, because the first half of the film, it's raining at night. The original Rodan, very much so, is still an important part of Toho's kaiju films saga. It was the first kaiju movie in color. It was the first kaiju color film to be shot in the broad daylight. It introduced the kaiju of Rodan, who for a long time at first was Godzilla's best friend. Though, granted, I would have loved to see the Godzilla versus Rodan script, even though that would have been kind of generic, but whatever, it still would have been cool. The first half of the film also works very well as a horror film. Would I label this as Ishiro Honda's darkest and grittiest film? A big part of me says yes, but I would also rank the original Godzilla pretty high up on that list too, so I think it's a little debatable. One of Akira Ifukube's best music scores for any movie that he did, hands fucking down. Although in hindsight, the original Rodan has a few flaws. Even though the Japanese version specifically, the color looks great, it definitely does look very faded in some shots. Outside of Kenji Sahara and his girlfriend, some of the human characters are kind of bland. The forced atomic allegory is forced. Really shouldn't have been there. Should have been a different allegory entirely. Should just completely left out the atomic origin stuff. But still, Rodan is an extremely well-made movie. It's a very enjoyable film. I wouldn't quite label it as one of my favorite kaiju movies anymore, but it is still one that I highly do enjoy. And anybody who is looking to get into Ishiro Honda movies, Rodan is a definite must-watch. At number 2, we have King Kong Escapes. Yes, King Kong Escapes is a bad movie. It's a very flawed movie, to say the least. But also, like with the Mysterians, I feel like I was just a tad harsh on King Kong Escapes. Despite the film's numerous flaws, it should not have been directed by Ishiro Honda. It should not have been written by Takashi Kimura. It should have been directed by Jun Fukuda and written by Shinichi Sekizawa, but no. Because of Tomiyuki Tanaka's own stupidity, he hired Ishiro Honda just because, oh, we're working with Western actors with this film. But the film still is a very, very, very fun romp. Doctor Who is so glorious to watch, especially when he's voiced by Burgermeister Meisterburger.
Yes, Kong's mine now.
Fair enough. That too, yeah. But still, King Kong Escapes, despite its many flaws, it's a really fun movie. Doctor Who is great. Kong himself is a lot of fun to watch. The first half of his fight with Mechanic Kong is awesome. Speaking of which, Mechanic Kong is an awesome concept, even though they really don't use them all that much. It's a damn shame that they don't. The film is very colorful because it was shot in Panavision, not Toho Scope. And I definitely do feel like it has a bit of a bigger budget because it's an American-Japanese co-production. So overall, despite its flaws, King Kong Escapes is a very, very, in my opinion, fun film. And I definitely would highly recommend you riff it MST3K style with some friends. Get some beer, get some burgers, and get some pizza. And just watch King Kong Escapes. Just fucking have fun. And at number 1, this has not changed. My favorite review for my Honda Thon is at my very favorite movie that I reviewed, Frankenstein versus Baragon still. As I said in my original video, it's one of the most criminally underrated kaiju movies in existence. I don't think it's just a good Ishiro Honda movie. I don't think it's just a good kaiju film. I think Frankenstein versus Baragon is a good movie in general. I think it is an unsung masterpiece. Frankenstein versus Baragon is fucking awesome as far as I'm concerned. It's got a really kind of dark plot, really dark origin story, great rendition of Frankenstein's monster. Honestly, this is probably my second favorite version of Frankenstein. I will never ever say that Boris Karloff did a good job as Frankenstein. Fuck off, I don't care. I still do say that Robert De Niro is the greatest Frankenstein actor ever. But if I was to pick a second favorite, easily it's the Frankenstein versus Baragon version. The final fight is still a fantastic spectacle to watch. The special effects are awesome. The monster Baragon still is young Frankenstein. No, I hate young Frankenstein. I think that movie is overrated and boring. But overall, what can I say about Frankenstein vs. Baragon that I haven't talked about already? I think it is an unsung masterpiece, and it is so criminally underrated. Anybody who is willing to look into Ishiro Honda movies and kaiju movies in general, in my opinion, yes, despite the movies both endings being fucking stupid, Frankenstein vs. Baragon to me is an unsung masterpiece and is one of the greatest kaiju movies ever made. Easily one of my favorite kaiju movies as well. Fan-fucking-tastic film. So with that being said, that is my new ranking and definitive ranking of my Honda-thon. So post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. Share this video with your friends. And look forward to tomorrow as I delve into another ranking video where I rank all 25 of Ishiro Honda's kaiju and tokusatsu films from the original Godzilla up to Terror Mechagodzilla. I look forward to that. And as always, go out and if you're going to see and review some Ishiro Honda movies, the top 5 on my list better be the first ones that you start with. And I will see you guys in the next video. And Justin, if you want to join me for that, you better rank your list pretty damn soon. Bye.